the resilience that I had to develop as a young person is one of the greatest gifts that I have. It was hard at the time, but it is, one of the things that I look back on most fondly in terms of being able to sort of lead the life I live today. And I suspect the same is the case for you.
Been looking forward to this. As we talked about before recording, I've been part of CEO peer membership groups for a long time. I would say north of 30 years now in terms of being in part of groups over time, but with overlap, being part of multiple groups at certain times, probably closer to 50 years. I really see the value in it. I would like you, if you could, for our listeners, what is a little bit of high-level history of what led to you taking this job? I think you've been CEO now for about 7 years of Tiger 21, but the early history that kind of led to this for you, if you could explain that.
Well, I'll come back to this in just a minute, but when I was first introduced to the opportunity, it was through a traditional retained search firm, and you tend to take those calls even if you're not really looking for something. And I candidly wasn't really looking for something, and I didn't. I'm just going to be honest, Lee, I didn't really know of Tiger 21. And I shared with the person from the search firm who was a partner at the firm. I said, I'm going to give you 55 minutes of your day back because this is not a good fit for me. I don't really get the firm. I don't really understand what they do. And while I don't begrudge people who have been successful and had wealth that's come about as a result of it, I've been pretty mission oriented, and I just don't know that, dedicating myself to helping rich people to get richer is really the thing that I want to be doing at this point in my career. And she took me to task, thankfully, and said, Tim, you totally don't get it. The mission here is incredibly powerful. These are people who are never going to be done learning, never going to be done contributing to their community, never going to be done, hopefully, having a positive impact. That obviously caught me off guard, first of all, that she took me to task, and second of all, that was really what Tiger 21 was all about, but she's so right. So I ended up obviously going on to learn a little bit more. Tiger 21 and I both decided to turn our keys for me to do this, and you're absolutely right, Leah. It was 7 years ago that I took the job, and I'm thrilled that I did. Probably one of the most impactful things for me personally that I've done in my entire career. So backing up from there, and I'll provide just a very hopefully abridged version of my career. I spent the first 10 years of my career doing leverage buyouts. I'm dating myself. I don't think we've heard the term leverage buyouts for a while now, private equity investing. And from there, really decided that I wanted to pivot with the help of my mentor to not things that were quite as transactional as that, and really seeking to, I love the idea of building value, because it's really what I wanted to be able to do, build value longer term in businesses, get more into the center of what makes them tick, and hopefully take responsibility working with others to be able to, in fact, take companies and, make them even more valuable, and not just, and I love your dimensions of value as well, because not just financial value, but other dimensions as well. And so I wanted to go run businesses, and I ended up running an education business. It was fortuitous. I'd love to tell you that I had the foresight to do that. I didn't. But I was fortunate. And I realized that if you're going to dedicate yourself the way that you need to and make the sacrifices that you need to build value, that to do it in businesses where you're helping people to improve their lives, helping them to be the best version of themselves, is just incredibly powerful and rewarding. And so I've basically been running education and human development businesses for the last 30 years, including the last 7 here at Tiger 21. So I'd been running a for-profit universities business. I was operating completely outside of North America at the time, and had finished there, and frankly was ready to probably be done being a CEO. And then, lo and behold, I had the call I referenced earlier, and it's been a great 7 years.
Yeah, I looked into it. Was Laureate Education, correct? So I looked into that. That had a huge reach globally.
It did, and I really enjoyed my time with Laureate. I didn't really understand the connections in Lee, with your background in peer networking, you would have probably gotten there more quickly than I did, between what I was doing at Laureate and what Tiger 21 was doing. But I'd always been a bit of a student of the network effect. Think of Metcalfe's law, and the power of the network and sort of the assets that sort of lie fallow in networks, and being able to use those for the benefit of the network. And so we were doing that at Laureate and some of the universities I was responsible for. I was responsible for, I think it was 34 universities from Portugal to New Zealand. And we were recognizing that, in many instances, not that you're ever going to replace the faculty, but that you can augment the faculty by having students engage with one another in areas where each of them they can learn from and teach to each other in some ways. And so harvesting that was really, really powerful. And I did pick up on that pretty quickly at Tiger 21. Sorry, Lee, I'm not really answering your question directly, but Laureate did have a big reach. And in fact, I did ultimately see the connection between Laureate and Tiger 21.
Yeah, and just to kind of affirm what you're talking about there, in my businesses, I've always worked on creating value holistically. So the money is super important, material, emotional energy, X factor for leaders. I think it's the scarcest commodity on the planet. And then the spiritual value creation side for me was about connectedness. So we lean into every community that we are part of, that we touch. And when I sold my aerospace business in 2016, we were in 60 countries, had 2,000 customers,
Mm.
global repair and overhaul business. But in that particular sector, if you will, a really good multiple selling it would have been 7 or 8x of EBITDA. And we got a 21.6x multiple because, and it was $100 million, very profitable business. I saw a clear path to $1 billion in revenue and a lot more profit. But because we created holistic value in all three categories and I focused on it, never had a leader quit ever in
Mm.
23 years run up from startup, from myself and two people taking a chance with me, to selling it, because of that. How does that resonate with you? It's an interesting approach I don't find a lot of leaders think about when they run their business.
Well, the ones that are getting attractive multiples have to, I would argue. And so, by the way, congratulations on that. That's an amazing accomplishment, or those are amazing accomplishments, I guess I should say. Uh, I'm aligned with you, Lee, and I think that you're building companies for the long term, and when you're thinking about those multiple dimensions of value. And, I dare say one of the paradigms that our members, and if I could, I'd love, I don't know if it's appropriate in a situation like this to sort of ask a question of the person who's leading the podcast, but I may take a little liberty there.
Yeah,
Many
please. This is a discussion to bring value to our listeners anywhere that it goes.
Well,
Yeah.
I hope it does. And because I want one of the paradigms that Tiger 21 members, I think, oftentimes gravitate to is sort of the five types of wealth, Bloom's five types of wealth, which again, I think sort of take the concept of wealth and look at it a little bit differently. You think about mental health, physical health, social health, financial health, and then time. And by the way, probably the one thing that Tiger 21 members would all agree on, and it may be the only thing, is that time is our most precious commodity. But it's really interesting. You sort of think about Bloom's five dimensions of wealth and then compare to your three dimensions of value. And I just think there's a lot of perhaps symmetry there that you could line them up. And I am curious if you sort of if you see that analogy as well.
Yeah, I think so. I created the three macro buckets to make it easier to understand, and everything else is sort of subordinate or supporting value creation within the buckets. And I've said, because typically the answer, like what's the scarcest commodity out there, and people will say time. I've For decades now, I've said I don't think it's time. I think it's positive emotional energy, because I'd rather live half as long on 9 or 10 than twice as long on 1 or 2, because of how much more fulfilling and enriching our lives would be. And so that's why I look at it that way. And that's why I say, hey, this is the X factor for leaders. Like how we show up, the environment we create from which everybody creates value is incredibly important. And having positive energy in good times and especially bad times and working on elevating your emotional energy. And anyway, that's why I picked that. I don't know if that resonates.
It
Obviously,
does.
we can't get time back, but how we use the time is kind of everything. And I think how we feel going through life is literally everything.
No, it's a g by the way, we may flip the script here, Lee, and ask you to come speak to tiger groups about this because, first of all, I think it would be a fascinating, discussion, and by the way, that's a lot of what Tiger 21 is fascinating discussions. I mean, oftentimes quite purposeful about things that, are areas where, members have opportunity, or need, and they support one another, but I think, that positive energy element is oftentimes what really emerges from a community of sort of, trusted peers where you can say anything. I was having a conversation earlier today with someone who doesn't really know Tiger 21 all that well. And they were asking about, do you sort of avoid kind of the topics that, are so kind of third rail in today's polarized world? And I said, not really, because, the people who we bring into this community are people that I think can listen to opposing views, respect them, and then sort of engage in a discussion around those things that oftentimes we can't do anymore. And so I think from that, I dare say, sitting in on many, many Tiger meetings, the positive energy is almost like it's almost a natural condition in these meetings. I mean, it's not to say that everything is Pollyannish by any stretch of the imagination. We're dealing with some incredibly difficult things oftentimes. But I do think, by the way, if I'm helping you or you helping me, that's probably a nice ingredient to create that positive energy.
Yeah. And I look at it and say productive positivity. This isn't about being Pollyannish. It's gotta really be towards actually creating value. And it looks like in getting ready for this discussion, Tiger 21 has kind of evolved at a high level. This is my take, from preserving and not making big mistakes because we've had a nice exit and growing it if we can and exposing members to each other and opportunities. And it's evolved into this learn, teach, preserve, and grow as a individual and portfolio if it makes sense, and impact that you want to have. So I love this evolution that you're going through. I'm 100% aligned with it. If you share a little bit about that, like when did the transition start to happen, and how well down that road are you now? And did I get it
Well,
right? Yeah,
well, I think yes, although I think that has probably been a big part of Tiger 21 since its inception. And I think it's probably evolved, and I'll talk a little bit about this, Lee, but to more emphatically what you're describing, more intentionally perhaps what you're describing. We kind of call it the whole person, but I think it's a bit more of where you're growing might have changed. And it's sort of maybe I'm less focused on growing my wealth. It could well be a part of what your second mountain may be or third mountain may be. But it could be I'm growing in other areas. I want to grow relative to sort of how I consider my legacy, which now has another very important dimension to it by virtue of the wealth that's been created. And it may well impact generations that come after me, maybe generations I'm not even going to meet. And so I wanna grow relative to how I think about my legacy. I wanna grow relative to how I think about philanthropy, and that gets back to your impact item. Both of those get back to your impact item. And so it's not as though members completely discount the idea of growing their wealth. I think they just think about growing in other areas. And so that has always been a part of it. But I think oftentimes, Lee, Tiger 21 is misunderstood as being overweighted toward the financial or the investing side of our members' lives. We really think about it as the whole person because when you've had success and there's wealth that's come from that success, what you come to realize is that every part of your life is impacted. And again, you know this directly, I think, I'm guessing, and our members do. And there are plenty of people out there who want to advise you as to how you should live your life, how you should invest your money, whatever it may be, especially when you've had wealth that's come about by virtue of success. But what we found is that the healthiest environment and perhaps the most productive way to be able to sort of to engage in those circumstances is by creating a board of advisors who are your peers, basically from different, collective. We may talk about collective intelligence and sort of the diversity in the community, but it's really important to create a diverse board of advisors, and that's what we do in each of these groups. And they really do focus on trying to help our members help each other understand, Lee, what's your area of growth? What's my area of growth? It, you know, ask you the hard questions relative to what you want to do, and then support you in getting there.
What have you learned about getting members to be um, open about that, vulnerable about that? Because there's a lot of folks, CEOs that are successful, and it's kind of hard to open up and say, I'm really struggling here or there. And I believe for most of them, they can't even see the main areas where they need to develop. So, what have you learned about sort of teasing that out so you can truly help them?
I think a lot of it, first of all, and again, I think you probably already know this, Lee, but just for the avoidance of doubt, uh, simply because you've become wealthy, it doesn't mean that you should be a part of the Tiger 21 community. And I think people who are not able to or not willing to open up in that way probably are people who are not going to be well suited to Tiger 21. And over our 27 years of existence, we've developed both art and science relative to being able to understand who are the people who are going to be better suited to be in this community. You have to be both a teacher and a student. And we've probably both met plenty of people and probably met many business leaders, who are going to be fantastic at being a teacher. They'll tell you everything. But their receptivity on the other side, when you've got suggestions for them, is not going to be there, or vice versa. I'll just absorb everything you've got to sort of tell me, Lee, but I am not going to really engage with you to be able to understand what it is that you need and how I can be able to help you. And so the litmus test that I often talk about for members at Tiger 21 is really, can you benefit from and contribute to the group and the broader community? And so again, without getting into all of the specifics about how do we, assess whether somebody is going to be able to open up, as you said, I think that is a key determinant, and we've become quite good at being able to determine who's going to be capable and willing to do that.
Yeah. And I look at it the same way. They have to be able to want to help others get excited about it. I've heard you talk about that in interviews that you've done getting ready for this. And I like how do you say it? No jerks, no bad people in the room.
That's one of the words we can probably use on your podcast, yes.
Right. I've got other words
But no
around that.
jerks, well, no jerks does it, exactly.
Yeah, and I've only had to exit one member because I didn't see that, and they kind of slipped through the filters. I'm sure you've had to exit a member or two. Has that even happened, or are your filters really good?
We are now approaching, by the way, 2,000 members, and again, just to sort of update the math. I'm not sure. I think we got you some dated information. Our members manage approaching $250 billion, so it's considerably more than what you'd outlined. But the law of large numbers just suggests that yes, we're not going to get it right every time. We get it right an extraordinarily high percentage of the time, but not every time. And yes, we have had to exit members who don't abide by the code of conduct, or it may just be that their life circumstances change. They'd like to stay as a Tiger 21 member, but they're not able to make the commitment of time, coming back there, to be a part of the group. And the seats around that table are just too precious to allow that seat to sit empty, because not only are they not getting value, but there are typically 12 to 14 other members who are in that room who would be hoping to get input from the chair that sits empty.
Yeah. And I think like any group of folks, one bad apple, as they say, can run the entire thing culturally and everything else. So we have to really be on the lookout for it. Tiger 21 has been around 27, 28 years, something
Long
like
time,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how did it start? If you can go back to the beginner and the founder and all of that, and then when did the growth start to take off? Because that this is pretty significant. What you've built here, it's incredible, and you're taking it and running with it. But how did it start?
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share that, Lee. Michael Sonnenfeld is the founder. He's also member number one. And thankfully, he's still here as our chairman, and he carries a lot of the soul of this place. And so, Michael, at the time, he's still a young man, young at heart, but he was a much younger man 27 years ago. And he'd had a significant wealth creation event at a relatively early point in his life. He is a first generation wealth creator in his family. And he was actually a member of another peer organization. And he said, I love that group, but I don't need help figuring out how to run my business anymore. I now need to figure out what do I do being a great steward of the wealth that's been created? How am I intentional and purposeful about that? What's next for me? And that's the thing that our members often ask is they've been so focused and oftentimes for a significant period of time on building a business, not always with the idea that it's going to create wealth for them. And it comes about as a bit of a byproduct. And then, okay, I've got that. Well, last week I had 200 people who laughed at my jokes. This week I've got a part-time administrative assistant that kind of cares. And so, and he's shared that with me, and many of our members would say that as well. So, you know, um, what's my purpose? What's next for me? And so, and additionally, he had advisors trying to tell him, where he should invest his money, how he should structure his estate plan. And he said, I'm probably going to be better suited if I just put others who are in a similar situation to me, but have sort of had wealth come about in different ways from different industries at different points in their life, whatever it may be. And let's share our experiences with one another, the definition of a healthy peer network. And he did. Um, and it has grown very nicely. First, for probably the first 10 years, Lee, it was predominantly concentrated in New York. We expanded to the West Coast shortly after that. And over the last 5 years, we've started to expand, and now we're everywhere in North America. Not everywhere, forgive me. Our friends in Jacksonville, we're launching in Jacksonville shortly. But I mean, there are a few major metropolitan areas where we are. Where we're still focused on creating a presence. But over the last 5 years, really also creating a global network. And it's really exciting to see that this model and the value that comes from the types of groups and communities that we create is just as valuable in London or Switzerland or Lisbon or Dubai or Mumbai and Singapore and others that are forthcoming.
That's great. And is it still about 90-10, 90% North America, 10% international?
It is. I mean, we're seeing very rapid growth internationally, sort of on a relative basis, but obviously we're starting from a much higher base in in North America. But yes, it's 90-10, almost exactly, by the way.
And then on your website, tiger21.com, you have requirements to be in the group. One of them is a net worth requirement or provable invested capital. Do you make that relative to the US dollar in other parts of the world? Do you change it, or is it that everywhere?
We will say that amount in local currency.
Okay.
So we do obviously adjust it for the local market. Uh, but I would also say that, and I hope you saw the other four C's that are on there, that being the C that relates to
Please,
capital.
please go through those. That'd be great for our listeners to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I also think, Lee, um, as I said earlier, just because, you've created wealth, it doesn't mean that this is going to be a good fit for you. And so, we look at capacity. Does somebody actually, again, getting back to this time item, do they have the time? Can they make the time to be a member? The character of the person, The no jerks piece, I think, is really an important item. Are they willing to abide by the conditions of Tiger 21? Absolute confidentiality. What's said in the room stays in the room. You don't talk to family members about that when you go home. You don't talk to even members of other Tiger members unless the member who shared something with you has given you the ability to do so within the community. And then contribution. Do you have something unique to be able to contribute to the community? Again, benefit from and contribute to. And so those other four C's, I think, we put as much or more weight on as we're considering potential members. But again, I would say all five of those C's apply all around the world. And what's really been rewarding, I've sat in the last year, new groups forming in Dubai, Mumbai, Singapore, and I'll be honestly, I always go there and there's a bit of trepidation. Is it going to feel like a Tiger 21 meeting? And every time it does. And we owe a lot to chairs are the people who lead our groups. Think of it as a chairperson, if you will. And we recruit chairs locally. It's a paid position. They're an independent contractor, but they are the people who lead our groups. And by the way, the circle starts at Tiger 21 with our chairs. And so, but they do an amazing job of making sure that we create a continuity and consistency at Tiger 21 for our members. Having said that, um, if you'll indulge me, Lee, just real quickly on this point, um, the person who oversees all of our groups, a gentleman by the name of Greg Wells, um, came up with something called conducting greatness, and I think it sort of outlines the sort of roles and responsibilities, if you will, among three key stakeholder groups at Tiger 21. Tiger 21 creates the score. The members are the musicians in the orchestra, and the chair is the conductor. We ask the chair to interpret the score and then to lead the members in creating the beautiful music. But they need to be able to step back and let first violin be first violin. And so, we want them to be able to interpret things. But we also need, because unlike most other peer organizations where you are not permitted to visit other groups, if you will, Tiger 21 not only allows that, but encourages it. And so when a Miami member goes in and sits in a meeting in Dubai, they need to make sure that it feels like a Tiger 21 meeting. So there is a structure that is followed for every one of our 157 meetings every month. Goes up every month, of course, but and so we want them to feel that consistency as well, yet allow ourselves to be able to localize, because the needs of a group in Mumbai may be different than the needs of a group in Miami.
Huh. I've observed so many other groups out there, the biggest ones on the planet and a lot of smaller ones. And I think one of the larger challenges is finding a chair to facilitate these sessions that has the wisdom, doesn't make it about themselves. They can have the nuanced judgment with every group, because every group of folks is going to be a little bit to a lot different. What are your criteria for finding chairs, if you will, to facilitate these Tiger 21 meetings?
I'll come back to more specifics in just a minute, but I think it's a combination of achievement and humility. And I think an observation that I had shortly after I joined Tiger 21 was relative to the members, that I couldn't believe how consistently I saw the marriage in an individual person of both achievement and humility. Aren't those people you really want to hang around with, Lee? I mean,
100%. 100%.
yeah, and so, that's who our members are, and if that's who our members are, that's who our chairs have to be as well, because sitting down and facilitating a group of 12 to 15 absolute type A's who, for most of their lives, have been the leader when they walked into the room, and now they walk into a room, and there are 15 leaders, and to be able to sort of do that effectively, requires a level of confidence and gravitas, yet is just as you said, the ability to sort of pull back from that and not make it about you as the chair, but to allow the beautiful music to emerge among the members is really an amazing thing. And I have to say, if Tiger 21, we do a lot of things well. With all due respect, and we did them all well before I ever got here. But if we do something exceptionally well, it's being able to identify who those chairs are and who have that combination of achievement and humility to be able to sort of be in that group and not make it about themselves, and to be able to sort of get the confidence and respect of 15 people who are all going to be leaders in their own right, to be able to allow them to sort of pull them together to help them and to help each other.
Yeah, for the groups that I lead, some days I don't have to hardly say or do anything because it just runs. And other days I'm talking half the time to keep it going. But it's whatever that balance needs to be, and figuring that out. I think is a challenge for chairs, and it's congratulations on getting that right. And what I've also learned, and I've heard you talk about this too, I think any amount of money people are coming for, but once you have a very large exit, a lot of sophisticated folks are coming for it that are good at manipulating and other ways of getting it from you. And what I understand from you is that within your groups, these are folks that don't have those hidden agendas. And to set up for this question a little bit more, I've had a number of friends with large exits come to me over the years because I've had a few and say, well, what do I do? I've got this $80 million check coming in soon or something more, or maybe a little less. And I would always give the advice, other than something nice for your family, don't do anything for the next 12 months. Take that time to learn about investing and being a good steward of that money. And then you've got a plan going forward. And if you want, I'll get you a t-shirt that says no on the front. Very, and on the bigger no on the back, and very few actually follow that advice. They just kind of give into the friend came in, oh, I've got this sure bet, give me $1 million or more from my business or some nonprofit or something else. And if you stand there and let it happen, they'll just strip it all away. I don't care how much it is, really fast. Uh, so it's hard to receive the advice and handle that new money, if you will. And just for context, I was kicked out of the house in the beginning of my senior year in high school, very low income family. Parents charged up debt in my name after I was kicked out because they had my personal information. So I started from kind of negative. I took a lot of years to pay that debt off, but I've created multi-generational wealth being here. So for me, it was a slow burn all the way up, and it was easier for me to fend off these crazy things.
Yes.
I did make a few mistakes, but nothing catastrophic. So here's the question: with all of that, how do you help members navigate that? And what are some of the bigger mistakes you've seen people make when they come into sort of newer large chunks of money?
Well, by the way, it sounds like you've walked the path ahead of the people that you're providing counsel to. So hopefully they would actually listen to somebody who's been there, done that. And so, and a big part of it is just that. When somebody comes into wealth, if they're in the tiger community, you know, it's probably less about offering advice and more about asking them questions. Because when you start to ask them questions, I think they may not be as well prepared to answer those questions. And so you may have heard that sort of the cornerstone of the Tiger 21 group meeting experience, Lee, is something called the portfolio defense, which, by the way, I think is probably a bit of a misnomer, both relative to portfolio and relative to defense. So just for your audience who might be wondering, what am I defending? Am I on the defensive? It's not that. Portfolio is really your life portfolio, of which one part of it, of course, is the wealth that you've created. So yes, there may be discussions about your asset allocation, your returns, the advisor you're using, your estate plan, tax strategy, whatever it may be. But it may just as well be about, sort of, have you had the discussion with your children about the wealth that your family has and what the impact is going to be on them? It may be about the brother who's come to you and asked for $2 million for the greatest idea in the world. And how do you sort of say no while not jeopardizing the relationship with your brother? And so the cornerstone, so it's not just about your financial portfolio, so your life portfolio, and defense comes from sort of think about defending your dissertation or something like that. It's sort of you're taking a position and you want to be able to have tough questions asked of you to make sure that the positions that you're taking are as well grounded as they can possibly be. So the portfolio defense, the cornerstone of the portfolio defense is sort of the 3 to 4 questions that you work on with your chair. You start this probably a month in advance, and every member does it roughly every year. And you ask the group of these other 12 to 14 amazing individuals. You have the room for typically an hour and a half, and it's focused on these 3 or 4 critical questions. And the chair won't let you get to the point where you're asking superficial questions. They will force you to go deep on these things. And that is so important relative to the value that members are going to typically get out of this. And so if you imagine doing that shortly after your wealth creation event, it's not, let's put this amount into philanthropy, this amount into, these assets, this amount that I'm going to set aside, into trust for our children or whatever it may be. It's, let's talk about, what are you trying to achieve? What are your fears? If you have concerns about the wealth, what are you worried about? And it's oftentimes it comes back to, I'm really worried about how this is going to impact my family. I want my children, if I have children, to be the best version of themselves and not just grow up in the shadow of their parents who created this wealth. And so that's not the only thing, of course, but it's how do you want to have an impact on your community? What are the causes that you really care about? And Lee, I don't know if it was this way for you, but for so many of our members, because they've been so focused on the opportunity that led them to the wealth, they haven't been able to give enough thought to some of these things. And so ask questions, take a step back. Your counsel's perfect in terms of pausing. But I think when you start to ask questions, oftentimes people are going to say, maybe I should and get answers to these for myself before I actually start to act. But coming back to the second part of your question, which is, what are the mistakes you see people making? It is often that it's acting without the best possible information, broadly speaking, or even good information, not thinking about the long-term consequences of this. And again, depending upon the wealth, we will say to members, develop a 100-year plan. Think about, sort of the trees that you want to plant that you're never going to sit under the shade of. And so, consider all of those things, because oftentimes, taking the steps to make sure that wealth remains a benefit and not a burden can be incredibly challenging. And you need to give deep thought to that and get counsel from a great board of advisors.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I'm a few years older than you are, and
Well,
I'm
you look a lot better than I do, Lee. So I need to get on your health and wellness program.
you've got great energy, so you've got youthful energy, and I love that. You look great too. But I'm in the legacy part of my life, and I've decided, and this has been for a long time now, driving holistic value creation behaviors in the world is everything that I'm doing. So I'm doing it in for-profit, nonprofit, public, private. I started in families almost 2 years ago, and I've got 40,000 parents in my dinner table family community where they're raising kids to intentionally create value in the world. I want to take it to millions. It's incredibly rewarding. Like everything I'm doing is that I'm leaning in and doing it. And I see the mistake that I think a lot of wealthy folks make of giving money to nonprofits, thinking that's the thing. And the nonprofit isn't having, in a lot of cases, maybe even the majority of it, the impact that they think that it is. Like a lot of nonprofits that I engage with, they're more seems like in business to make payroll than actually have the impact, and they're not really good at measuring it. So I've taken the path of leaning into everything, giving literally millions of dollars a year to different things, but I'm all in on those different things philanthropically. What are some of the success stories that you're seeing with Tiger 21 members around, having true impact? And are you seeing a lot of leaning in or more just oversight? Give me the lay of the land there. I'm super interested in this.
Well, as am I. And again, I'm going to congratulate you, because I think, the approach that you're taking is is really powerful. And I think if I sort of tease something out of what you're saying, it's not just about giving the money, it's about giving something more, some part of contributing part of yourself as well. And by the way, our members would say, even after they've had their wealth creation event, their alpha returns come from the areas where they probably have unique expertise, or passion. So, and by the way, it's not just in terms of your investment portfolio. It can well be in terms of your philanthropic portfolio as well. And so, I think you're talking about something which is, you I can just tell you have passion about. And I think that is where, we've tried to guide our members. Our philanthropy network, networks at Tiger 21 are intended to cut across the entire community in areas where members have interest or expertise. And so our philanthropy network was one of the first networks we created. This really has only come about in earnest in the past 6 or 7 years. And the philanthropy network came about after I'd given my first member presentation with our founder, Michael Sonnenfeld, at our signature event, which is called the Global Exchange. And it was the first year I was here. And we had talked about philanthropy, Michael and I had in our member presentation. And one of the members came up to me afterward and he challenged me and he said, Tim, we've talked about getting sort of a community of philanthropists together here at Tiger 21, and it just hasn't happened. And I said, Steve, if you have any interest in doing that with me, I would love nothing more, because I think it's something that, again, is lying fallow at Tiger 21. There is this ability to help one another, be able to understand, how do you have an impact, and how do you have an impact not just on the community, but hopefully in something that is deeply important to you. There's also tactical things. How do you structure a DAF? How do you, all of these other areas? How do you think about measuring impact? Are the philanthropies you're interested in sort of able to share where they're having an impact? And so we created this community, and I think we've got something in the neighborhood of, more than a quarter of our members are involved here. And I think everybody's involved in philanthropy in one way or another, but these are the people who've come together to say, how do we actually develop our own best practices to help one another figure out how do we avoid the pitfalls that you were describing, Lee. And so I dare say it's one of the things that I'm most proud of here is just the way this community is really gravitated toward, among all the other things, understanding how do we help one another achieve the impact side, especially the philanthropic impact side, to an even greater extent. And by the way, I think we're only scratching the surface.
Yeah. Yeah, getting it right. I think of it as having a net positive value creation impact on whatever you do. So even on the material side, if a company makes $1 billion in a quarter and everybody celebrates and they get a good return, but they caused $1.5 billion in damage to the environment, well, that was negative. That doesn't work. And so seeing a net positive value creation in any and all of the three buckets is how I look at it, like objectively measurable value, materially, emotionally, spiritually. Spiritual on the connected side, we talk about communities. That is so important. And I've been part of a number of communities since I've been here a long time. I can go anywhere in the world and stay with folks I met through aviation in that community. I taught martial arts for 23 years. I've got Taekwondo sisters and brothers all over the planet pretty much I can go stay with, still connected to that community. The power of it is incredible
Yes.
Around all of it. But the having this net positive impact from a philanthropic standpoint seems to be a real challenge. Like we can say we're doing lots of stuff, but when I look and measure it, I'm not sure. And
But
and so you have a couple of, does that resonate with you? What
oh,
I'm
it
saying?
absolutely resonates. And again, I feel like I'm in a Tiger meeting right now, because here's an example, Lee, is you would put something like that on the table, this concept of net positive impact. And it's going to spur, first of all, for probably, a number of people that are in the room, they're going to say, I hadn't thought about it that way, and I probably need to. And they're going to forever be changed by virtue of that, relative whether they fundamentally, go home and actually change how they're approaching their philanthropic commitment of time and money. may not change right then, but it's going to be there for them forever. And, you're going to spur interesting conversations. That's the kind of thing that happens. And again, you'd be a member putting a provocative topic on the table that is going to impact how people think about these things. And by the way, others are going to be doing the same thing for you. And so, um, I think what you've outlined in terms of net positive impact is absolutely correct. And I think that, again, I can't speak to all of the conversations that take place, but I do hear a lot of deep conversations about how do you understand, you know, what what the investments of time and money that you're making are having, the impact that they are having, and considering all variables involved. So, yeah, good for you.
I think it's the right lens. And with your background in education, so this is one of the questions I've been kind of dying to ask you. And like, what do we do with what's going on? And to kind of set up for it, one of the things that I do as part of my mission of driving holistic value creation out into the world, behaviors, thinking, actions, is I work with high school kids and some groups of early college students. And in smaller groups of maybe 20 to 50, I've spoken to almost 5,000 high school juniors and seniors now
Mm.
about thinking about and creating value as a young adult. A lot of it's starting a business that they want to do someday. And they're not learning life skills. I just spent all day at a high school with six different groups of seniors, and uh, I would say, well, if you have a budget, what's the first line item on the budget? Should be savings, I think. What do you think? Yes. Well, if we have this income, what's a 5% or 10% of that to put on the savings? And most of them couldn't calculate 10% of a number.
Mm, mm,
Like
mm.
this is what's going on. And I think the purpose of an education should be to create value in the world, not go through the treadmill and feed this. I think of it kind of as a crony capitalistic system backstopped by the taxpayers. But it should be to create value in the world. And I think a lot of educational institutions get it right, and a lot of them, I think they've completely missed this. What do we do to move it in a direction where everybody's thinking about creating value? And I don't think in the United States we're creating even 10% of the value we could be creating. What are your thoughts around this? Or do you think I'm kind of out to lunch on this one? It's okay to challenge me hard if you need to.
Well, I think education systems around the world are probably they're struggling today. I think it's a generalization, but I think an apt generalization. And I think they're probably going to struggle even more going forward. And I think your note on life skills is really, really important because it's challenging to build that into a core curriculum. And if it doesn't come about organically, if you don't have people that you can look to as mentors, or if you don't have sort of a community at school, whether it's primary, secondary, or post-secondary, that can the life skills part of this can be really, really challenging. And then the other partly is candidly AI, and it's just going to sort of, if you think about the life skills, which is how I'm going to live, and that'll certainly impact my career. But then also, what do I need to be able to have a career that's fulfilling and meaningful? Um, Many of our uh, institutions are structured to be able to sort of oversee a curriculum that doesn't need to change nearly as rapidly as the curriculum needs to change going forward. Now, we don't need to sort of go back and say the curriculum of how do you teach American history needs to change as dramatically. But how do you prepare somebody for the jobs that are going to be available 10 years from now? That does need to change, and it needs to start probably very early on in one's education. Um, and then you overlay that against sort of, in particular, I most recently was in the post-secondary system, and justifiably, you have regulatory bodies that accredit these institutions, and are they going to be able to keep up with the pace of change that the jobs that people are going to be going into are going to require of those post-secondary institutions. And I'm not just talking about the traditional four-year university degree. I'm talking about community colleges. I'm talking about apprenticeship programs. I'm talking about everything. And so I think it's a great challenge. I dare say there is opportunity that sits out there as well. Not exactly sure what it looks like. And it probably does rely on advancing technologies at some level. But at the same time, if you want the life skills piece, I don't know if you've ever come across Zach Cass, who is doing he was the head of go-to-market at OpenAI, and he's now off doing some things talking about how AI will impact things going forward. And he is a massive advocate, I believe, for getting screens out of the classroom, somewhat oddly for a guy who was at OpenAI. And his I think he would tell you very much of, we need to be sort of focusing on sort of how these young people learn as much as what they learn, and maybe that's getting back to a bit of the life skills piece that you were referencing. Um, anyway, but I think it is a great challenge for all of us going forward, and it's only going to become greater over the course of these next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, well, one of the biggest things that I see as an opportunity is just belief structure in the kids, what they believe is possible. We keep lowering the standards for them. Like parents will say, our kids can do anything they set their minds to if they do the hard and smart work, but they keep lowering standards because now they want to protect them emotionally. They can't have an emotional feeling that's a struggle, where these are super healthy struggles to get them ready to be an adult. And so I spend a lot of time on that, and it's kind of amazing. It doesn't take much with a 60 to 90-minute session with these kids. I'll see videos of them years later citing what we talked about in there
Oh, that's
as a way to really create value. And I even had breakfast with a friend of mine recently, and he said, it's just so hard for kids these days. It's going to be impossible almost to get a house and pay for it. And I looked at him and said, you and I would figure this out at that age, no problem. We were plunked here today. He goes, absolutely. Well, why are you lowering the standard for all the kids out there and giving them an excuse or a reason to kind of be a victim and set back?
it's a great point. And maybe it's another compounding challenge that we've got is, our children growing up in the era of participation awards. And, I don't want to fall prey to the generational evolution, which is, I sound like my parents did at my age, et cetera. And of course, I didn't think they were right. I'm sure my children don't think I'm right. And they're probably right. But I tend to agree that, I certainly, and I'm guessing the way you described your background, mine is somewhat similar actually, Lee, is, the resilience that I had to develop as a young person is one of the greatest gifts that I have. It was hard at the time, but it is, one of the things that I look back on most fondly in terms of being able to sort of lead the life I live today. And I suspect the same is the case for you. How do you, when you're engaging with, let's say, the high school individuals that you've engaged with, I'm guessing they've received your message effectively. How do you challenge them to go out and sort of find those areas of struggle?
Yeah, even the faculty say they've never heard anybody talk about it this way, and they come away inspired. And every time I do it, I'll get messages for weeks, if not months later, about the changes that
Mm.
came about. And it's really taking them from, in the beginning, I kind of get the tone of the room. If you could meet anybody in the world, who would it be? They all have somebody, a sports star, or celebrity, whatever. What do you think your chances of meeting them would be? Oh, 0 to none. By the end of it, they switch to, you can start anywhere and go everywhere. And if their passions align, they could probably meet anybody in the world that have passions aligned with where they're at. So that's what really happens. For me, it's about belief structure. And, very short example. I love music. I'm here at my
Yeah.
music studio today. It's been part of my life. It's been a common thread since I was 5 years old. I played over 1,000 shows in a rock band and all that. And I love business. And it's like, here I am, young adult. I want to do something around business or music. And in music, I wanted to meet somebody named Steve Vai. And of course, I found out where he was doing these guitar camps, and I met him. I've been able to play on stage with him and his band four
Oh,
times.
congratulations.
I also wanted to meet Jack Welch. And in 2008, I went to a session that he was doing on his leadership principles, and there was 100 folks in the room. I had the smallest company in the room at the time, most managing over $1 billion in business.
Mm.
Became great friends, and he was a partner in my business until he passed. Very loving, caring friend. I still stay in touch with Susie, his wife,
Mm.
and so, but our passions fully aligned. And
Yeah.
that's a whole other story about how that happened. But he reached out to me based on my participation in those groups. But it goes back to passions have to align. So the kids, if they have that, it can't be you want to meet them just because. That's what changes, for them. It's changing their belief structure. You can literally start anywhere and go everywhere. And when I started a company doing electroplating by hand, this brush plating process, I never even thought about this will be a global aerospace business in 23 years that will be the, sought after company of virtually any large aftermarket business out there. And that's that struggle piece, right? You struggle, get a capability, use it to create value, builds confidence, fulfillment, self-esteem, and you just keep taking bigger and bigger steps. You get more comfortable being uncomfortable in different degrees of it. Does that answer your question?
It does. I remember sitting in a room one time when Condoleezza Rice was talking to a group. It happened to be university students in India. And I won't share everything, but she said, if I can leave you with one thing, it's do things that are hard. We all tend to want to do the things that are easy, go on the path. If we like math, we want to do math. If we like, sort of liberal arts, we want to do. But she said, focus on the things that are hard because those are the things that are going to round you out and build your character. And I thought it's exactly right. I guess my question, Lee, is, how do we take it from the 5,000 odd students to the 7 million students? That to me is what we've got to figure out, because creating that belief system, I think you're exactly right, is going to help. Maybe not all 7 million, but it'll help a lot of them.
Yeah, well, that's why I started Dinner Table, dinnertable.com. I want to get to millions of families. The education system for K-12 in the US, whenever we go to the state legislatures to try to pass things that are good for the kids, usually it's adults fighting over money. It's never about the kids. And so I feel like we need to come in through the families and help families understand what it takes to raise kids that will create value in the world, and they can collectively apply the pressure. So we have 40,000 parents now. I want to take it to millions. So I'm working on it. This is the whole legacy piece that you and I have been talking about. Tim, this has been awesome having you on here. I've been looking forward to this. If our listeners want to learn more about Tiger 21 or connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, as you already highlighted, tiger21.com, and they can come in, they can contact us. I may give you, well, you've already got my contact information, Lee. So if anybody wants to reach me, come through you. But I welcome anybody who'd like to talk about this. And by the way, Lee, thanks to you as well. Thanks for doing this. I think your message is important. I've thoroughly enjoyed this as well, and hope we have opportunities to connect afterwards. I think you're pursuing a lot of really big and meaningful areas. I commend you.
Yeah, thank you. And, Tim, I hope we can stay in touch. And I think we're super aligned around the impact that we want to have. And we're at similar stages in our lives. And it's about especially the kids today. They're the future. I want it to be an amazing future. I don't want it to be a dystopian future. And I'm super optimistic, even with AI, which we weren't able to jump into. There could be bad things that happen, but also incredible things.
Exactly.
And I'm going to rely on human nature to drive the balance towards incredible and get through the challenging times.
I line up right with you on that one.
All right. Well, thanks again, Tim, for your time. And this has been the Show Your Value podcast. If you got some value out of today's episode, please like and subscribe. And until next time, show your value to the world.